today changes my whole entire life.
Welcome to Gritability, a podcast about the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and with me today in the studio is Bryan Hopkins, lead singer of Elvis Monroe. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Dude, I'm excited. Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it. I was saying this off camera that you and I have purposely not had a conversation just so we could have a conversation on camera. And I love that sense of discovery. You know, when you're sitting here, it's like going and having coffee with someone and learning about them. But, you know, others can be inspired by the story. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I'm grateful that we were able to nail it down and get in here together today. So honestly, knowing very little about your background, but similarly, like hearing your story, I was really hoping to get in here today and us just have a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And you give me some of the background. George gave me a little bit behind the scenes before we got started. So I hear that there's a lot in your background.
Yeah, there is. You know, I'm the lead singer of a band called Elvis Monroe. I started this with my bandmate, Ben Carey, and you might know him from a band called Lifehouse. You and Me, Hanging by a Moment, all these huge songs. They've got, I think, 15 or 16 top 20 or top 30 hits and 2 massive songs as well. But he's my best friend. I write all these songs with, and I get to have a life that I've dreamt of as a kid. I grew up in Oregon. I'm an ex-athlete, who was just searching for that thing. I've never drank or done drugs. I don't know what alcohol tastes like. I've never had a drug in my body.
Really?
I had a wisdom tooth, my wisdom teeth pulled, and only when I found out it was Tylenol with codeine, I didn't take it. You know what I'm saying? So those kinds of things. And I'm Native American Indian. So I know that on both sides of my family, it's unfortunately alcoholism is something that is dealt with heavily. And I knew at the age of 8 years old, I'm not going to drink or do this, and I want more for myself. And sports was my way out. And so I grew up in Oregon and ended up in California, which, man, we would need like 5 hours to get into the things that and how I landed in this seat. But I'm giving you the abbreviated version, like being an ex-athlete who got hurt, and it's,
there's already so much.
Yeah,
I want to start with
please.
with that one. You said at 8 years old, like you made a decision, knew right then. What was it that was so impactful to make that lifelong decision?
It's easy. It sticks out with me. And that is, I had witnessed so many things. My parents were young. They had me at 16 years old. And so, my dad and mom, they were kids. They were in their early 20s. And here I am, 8. And I'd already witnessed enough things where my dad was my dad's a great guy. And he was young, and he was always hey, go stay at Grandpa Rocky's house or Uncle Rocky's house, and Aunt Terry's to learn discipline, to learn, go stay with them for the summer. My cousins and stuff would all come stay with us. Yet my dad's the youngest brother in his family, but he was a functioning alcoholic. He was somebody who was drinking heavily on the weekends and going to work, doing his job, coming home, raising 4 kids. But on the weekends, like if we got a new TV or something, and he and my mom got into an argument, instead of putting hands on my mom or whatever, he's punching the walls, or he'd break the TV, or I remember him fixing up this old truck, and I go out into the garage to try and take the bat away from him because he's beating up the car, because it was something he dealt with. But my dad, I come to find out later, my dad dealt with things like he was in the military, a Marine. I wear his dog tag. You know, my dad's a Marine. And I would find him at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk and crying, you know, and it's because in Vietnam, he was supposed to go over, and because he had me, you know, they didn't send him over, and he was the platoon leader, tank driver. He, you know, and none of his friends in his platoon came back. And so he held this sense of survivor's remorse. And I didn't know until later, figured it out later on when I had conversations. I have a great relationship with my parents. My family is really tight. But I knew when my dad was sitting on the porch and I'm reading the lyrics. My dad was a singer in a band as well. And I'm making sure he's singing the right lyrics. And then he asked me to go grab him a beer. So I run to the refrigerator, grab him a beer, hand it to him, and he said, you know, that wasn't fair of me. I asked you to go grab me a beer. I can do it myself. And 2, one day you're going to want to drink. And I don't want you to hide it from me. That day's going to happen, and I need you to be safe. I need you to just be honest with me, open. And I looked at him and said, I'm never drinking. You don't have to worry about that with me. And he said, why? I said, because I don't want to do this to my kids or my wife or my girlfriend or myself. And he just looked at me in awe. And I'm like, you're great. I love you. But I just don't want to repeat this. And I'm 8 years old.
Wow. What
and
an
new
insight, even at that early age.
But it was just, but I'm also the oldest of 4. So at 8 years old, I had a 6-year-old brother, 5-year-old sister Angel. So Cody, Angel, and Buffy, and my sister was the youngest. Buffy was 3. So my job was to look out for them, and my dad did everything he could to make sure that I got all the things that I needed. But I was the oldest of 4, and my job was to make sure that they were safe. You know, so that right there, it just stuck. And George knows this. I mean, I'm an athlete.
Yep.
And so
you could sling it.
You know that, but that whole thing, I knew as a kid growing up that was my way out. And if you're across town and people compared
Athletics.
you and me, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, football and baseball.
Yep.
And I played basketball too, but as I got older, I separated the two, and I was a quarterback, and then I was a pitcher and played shortstop, and then first base, and it was crazy. And
well, just to cut in there,
yeah,
quarterback and pitcher. I'm catching. You were also at 8 years old, the protector of your siblings. Like, you've been a leader from a very young age. So this was some of what I was curious, like, to get that background. So what did that look like in sports when you separated the two? High school, things start getting serious?
Oh yeah, like it was one of those things where I needed to be the guy in charge of winning or losing. And I would take that responsibility. That rode on me, and I was okay with that. You know, because if somebody else was leading the charge and we failed, and that meant I failed, then now I'm going to take the responsibility. It's got to be on me. And baseball was, you know, it's a team sport, and I love being a team player. I'm in a band. I don't want it to be the Bryan Hopkins show. I want it to be a band. I love being the leader of the band. I'm the lead singer, songwriter. This, again, it's that thing, and the thing that I was chasing, and not drinking or doing drugs. I'm chasing a high that people don't have. You only see it on TV. You see it in the movies on the big screen. You go to concerts, you pay for tickets, and your night out is to go see somebody do what they do. Well, that's what I do. And so I've been chasing that my entire life, and that's who I am. And that carried over. That's what I'm saying. Not drinking, doing drugs, those kinds of things. Just, I was going to outdo you across town or in the next state or 3,000 miles away. I was going to outwork you, but I was also not going to be at the parties on the weekend. I was not going to get into any trouble doing anything outside of, I needed an edge. all the way around. Those were the things that was my goal as a kid. And I knew that. I was pitching my dad said I had to throw, every other day at a tire that he built and a mound, and he taught me how to do it. And by the time I'm 10 years old, I'm out playing all the team. I'm out playing them, and they have to put me with the 12-year-olds. I can't even make the all-star team because I'm too young, but I'm the best player. And so that was me going through my childhood and high school. And I was a kid who, I'm 6'3", and I knew everyone. I knew the guys in the leather jackets smoking weed, around the corner, the people in the glee club and doing the plays and those kinds of things. I knew the athletes, but I ate by myself. I walked around the school by myself, and I was comfortable with that. I didn't need a group of friends to know who I was, and I was different. Like I was,
Clearly, those are things like what you're describing as someone who, I had a lot of potential in my youth. Athletics were central to my identity.
I see that in you today. I follow you on social media, and I'm like, like he's outworking me right now. I feel bad. I got to get out of bed, and I'm seeing what you and the wife are doing, so yeah.
And that's what motivates me. Still that same level of competition, but at a young age, like myself looking back now, I didn't have that same drive. I wanted to play. I didn't necessarily wanted to put in the same level of work. Mm-hmm. I could go out and shoot around for hours by myself, but to do it in a disciplined manner, which it sounds like you had that early on, and to be able to take on that responsibility, say, listen, I want to lead. I want to be responsible for us winning or losing.
Yep.
And likewise, at the same time, you're talking about being able to walk alone. Yeah. Like, I don't know too many people who are capable of like finding that in themselves, that level of identity at such an early age. Like this was what I was really curious to hear, because, the things that you've done are absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
And I'm always looking for the blueprint. Like, what can I learn?
What's the makeup? And that's the thing. And I get that. And you asked me that question before we got here, and I'm like, I don't know, but I know who I am, and I know that those are the things that I had to do to be better. An example, I remember a high school coach, and to this day, I gave him credit. I was standing in front of 3,000 kids doing a show, and I'm like, I did this thing, I put together a thing called the You Choose Tour. And I went to these schools, my old schools, Alaska, California, and I put together this thing sharing that, oh yeah, by the way, I'm standing here playing a song that that's on the radio, and I'm just like you. I went to this school, or I went to the school across town, or whatever, I'm just like you in this Alaska school in a small town. You can have big dreams. And this is what I get to do. Oh, and by the way, I've never drank or done drugs, and nobody could talk me into doing something that I didn't want to do, because there's enough problems as a teenager that you have to deal with, already. And I knew that then, before social media, before all those things, when I was in school. And a coach that had an influence on me, a teacher that had an influence on me. And I didn't get great grades. I got passing grades. And because I was so focused on the athletics side of stuff and being a good person. And those kinds of things like resonated with me. So I'm standing in front of the school saying this, and it made me think of a time that we're raising money for jerseys, and I'm going from house to house collecting bottles and cans. This coach, clearly, he comes from a family of money, and they own the jewelry store, all these things in town. And he's a coach and a teacher. And I'm the only one there, because I went to a rich kid school, and we were the ones at the bottom of the hill, not at the top of the hill, But I got into that school. I went to that school to play sports. They wanted me there. And he looks at me and said, I want you to go to this baseball camp. And I'm like, oh yeah? And he tells me how much it is. And he might as well said it was $10,000. It didn't matter because the amount of money was not happening. And I wasn't going to ask my parents for it or even put that burden on them to even think that they're letting me down. And he goes, you should go though. I really want you there. And it was all these kids from all over the state and a whole week. And I'm like, well, that's wishful thinking. I show up, my mom said, there's an envelope here with your name on it. And it's sealed and it's got cash and the application. And he had given me the money to go to this camp, which would have been against all kinds of rules, but it didn't have his name on it. And I knew where it came from, So I signed up for the camp and they gave out 2 awards, a pitching award and a hitting award. And there was 300 kids there. And I walked out with both. And neither one of them, they this is their camp, pitching leader. And I walked out with both awards and it came back and I'm like, they only gave out 2 awards, 300 kids, and I got them both. And so that kind of thing I was going to make the most out of all these things. And that's who I am today. Like I got in my car and moved from Oregon when baseball went away from me. I got hurt. I was being drafted out of high school, went to college, got hurt in college, went to Alaska to work and get away from ball.
I don't want to jump past that.
Please.
Because it's a lot of times it's those injuries that become defining moments in a negative way.
Yeah.
Clearly that's not the case here. So what was it that happened and how did you then deal with that injury?
I was pitching in the state championship American Legion ball and in a game 1 of a 7 series, and I hurt myself throwing a slider. And there were 2,000 plus people there, TV and everything, and I stood there crying on the mound. Knew that I had the guy 0-2 and threw a hard slider outside of the plate and on purpose, and I heard a pop. And I knew I'm screwed. And I tried to pitch one more time, and I was in pain. And I was done for that time. But there was a coach there that in Clackamas County, this coach was like, I want you as a ball player. Like, I'll give you a full ride still. And he's like, but do you think you can be able to pitch at some point? And I went to play third base for him and hit. And I was hitting .593, which is that's a big number, And so I'm like, I hope so. And so I stacked the team. And he's like, well, I need an ace pitcher. I'm like, I got a guy. I know I played against him. Let's find out where he's going. Can you give him a scholarship? And he'll only come if his best friend can have a scholarship, but he doesn't play sports. And so got his best friend, then grabbed 2 other guys against, that I played against in high school, and stacked this team and took it to its first playoffs at this school. But I was only going there just because the Angels told me to stay in town and so they could watch me still develop. And then it just wasn't working out. Like, I had pitched the game of my life and turned to my dad. Well, actually, I played that summer, went to Alaska to get away from it all, just to work. I just wanted to work, make money. So I was painting ships on dry dock. I was working at a gym selling memberships, and I was running a jackhammer on the weekends.
Hustling.
And the only reason why I was doing all these things was right when I got off the plane. I grabbed the newspaper and I saw these guys playing ball in the newspaper and these girls followed me in a car, in my taxi, and then they were like, who are you? And I said, can you give me a ride to this place? And I grabbed my glove and my cleats, and because that's what I knew. And they took me there, and these guys are like, are you a ball player? Who are you? And I said, I do. I play ball. And so they tried me out in a game, and I hit 2 home runs, and it was fast pitch softball in Alaska, Ketchikan, Alaska. And they're like, what are you doing here? I said, I just came to work. And they went, well, he owns this, he owns this, he owns this. And what kind of work you want? What kind of pay you looking for? And I said, I came to work. And they're like, well, we practice 3 days a week. We play 3 games a week as well. And I'm like, again, I came to work. And they're like, come work for me. You'll be on the clock. You can clock in when we're playing and practicing, whatever. And I'm like, okay. So I even made their all-star team. We beat Canada in the championship. And it was, total blast. Like, I'm 18, going on 19 years old. And then came back from Alaska and walked on a team. And walked on a college team, and then pitched the best game of my life, and came home to my dad and said, I can't do this for a living. This hurts. Like, I know it in my heart. I'm done. This dream is over.
When you say it hurts, it physically hurt?
It was like, it hurt me. It hurt my heart for the idea that I was giving up the only thing I knew. The only thing I knew was how to stand on that mound or how to stand at the plate and be the guy that I wanted the ball in my hands, or I wanted to be at the plate down 2 with bases loaded, whatever. I wanted to be that guy. And so many moments, I can point out, we were down and I hit a double and brought everybody in, and then came in and struck out the side, and game was over, and I won the MVP of that tournament. Or you know what I'm saying? Like, I can remember all these things, and that's all I knew, and it was gone. And I turned to my dad and said, I got to go after something else. And I don't know what it is, but it's not here. And my mom and dad, and they didn't know this about me until I did my podcast, Sitting in Your Seat. My mom watched an episode, and I said, I jumped in my car. We had a little money in my pocket that I saved working for my uncle for 3 months. And I pulled into the Gold's Gym parking lot in North Hollywood at 2 a.m. And when I woke up, I said, how much for a membership? They said $400 and some for the year. I paid for that membership because I was going to give myself a year in Hollywood. And I lived in that parking lot for 3.5 months. And
really?
Yeah. And I was like, my mom and dad didn't know. They didn't know that I went out there. I lived in the parking lot. I was sleeping at night in the beginning till I tricked my way into getting a job at Jerry's Famous Deli. Never waited tables in my life. It was hilarious. I walk in and I asked for a job and filled out an application, and they didn't have a way to call me. I didn't have a phone. So I just kept going back. And like the third time I went back, this woman, she's pregnant with twins, and she goes, come here, I need you to see something. And she shows me my application, and it's all these notes from the girls that work there. It said, give him a job, give this, hire this guy. And she goes, that's from the first day that I walked in. And it was just sitting on her, at the table. And she's like, so I'm glad you came in. I'm going to give you a job. And I didn't know what Jewish food was. I didn't know what a matzo ball was. Nothing, you know what I'm saying? And I lied and said I had experience, and I didn't. And I waited tables there and became like the guy for 3 years. I was the best at it. No joke. Like I loved it. And my music career that's where it started, was in that space.
It started in the deli.
Yeah, and I'm not even kidding, man. Like when I say that it did. One of my childhood friends landed a TV show called The Guys Next Door. And he was a wrestler on the USA team, and he got away from sports as well. And he landed a show, and I went to go pick up his residual check. And the agent walks by, and her name was Natalie Rawson, and she said, you're not a client of mine. And I'm like, nope, no. And she's like, you an actor? And I said, no. She's like, don't go anywhere. She walks in the next room, comes out, and hands me this piece of paper, and she said, this is a monologue. You ever seen Breakfast Club? I'm like, love that movie. She's like, okay, this is one of the monologues from there. Can you read this for me? And she goes, I'll give you like 15, 20 minutes. Come in the office. And I went, sure. I got nothing to lose. And I did. And I went in, and she's like, okay, I'm going to send you on an audition tomorrow. And I'm like, what? She's like, there's this woman, and I remember her name because she was so amazing. Her name is Barbara Libis, and she was an older lady back then. Her claim to fame was that she gave Kevin Costner his first job, speaking role, right? So he put his office next, he has his office on Paramount Lot. Her office is right next door. So, and he pays for her space because she made his career. So I knew this going in, and I read for her, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, how long you been studying?" And I said, "I've never done this. Like, I just read for Natalie yesterday for the first time." She's like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "No." She goes, "Okay, I'm bringing you back for producers. This is what we're going to do." And my career started there, and it started right then. And as an actor, and I've been on Saved by the Bells and TV shows and movies of the week and soap operas and stuff. So I had climbed that ladder in acting all the way to William Morris as my agency, which is the top. That's the biggest.
Sure.
And I quit because music was, when you back that up, I was doing both simultaneously, and how I fell into music was insane. Like it's
Well,
you don't even believe it. But
what's curious to me is like we hit all, you growing up, athletics being central, but you started out with your dad being in a band, leader of a band. So clearly you've been around music your whole life. Like where was that from early on? And because you're all the way up to like now you're getting the break where music is coming up,
Right.
But where did that start?
Well, music was my dad and my mom, I wrote a song called Backyard Family Barbecue. And because it was my dad and uncle, my uncle played guitar, and he played a pawn shop guitar. When I say pawn shop guitar, it was his guitar, but he would pawn it for beer money, like randomly, and then get it back. Find a way, go shoe some horses or whatever, and then go get his guitar back. So any random day in our backyard, Tuesday, Friday, whatever, somebody would bring over some beers. My uncle would be there he'd come from 30 minutes away, 40 minutes away from Vancouver into Salem. And my dad and he would be in the backyard playing. My dad's singing, playing spoons. My uncle's playing guitar. They never get through a song because they'd start laughing, make up lyrics, and then go on to the next song. And it would just turn into a little backyard family barbecue, and the neighbors would come around and friends would come around. So I grew up around it. And my mom was a big fan of 50s music and stuff. And then that bled into my brother. My brother became somebody who loved music, and because clearly he was a really great athlete and a really good football player, but he's trying to keep up with his big brother. And that, to this day, he'll say that was his demise. Like the kind of work he saw, well, I'm not going to work as hard as my brother to get these things, so I got to find something else. And so music was his thing. And then I had another uncle and a cousin chasing music. But my dad, I remember being 7, 8 years old, and we're at a wedding, and somebody called my dad up to sing. And that was a mistake, because as soon as they pulled my dad up to sing, everybody started paying attention at the wedding. And my mom's having to stand side of stage and mouth the words to him. I remember this because my dad's nervous, and they're playing cover songs, and so he's looking at my mom for the right lyrics, and then until he got comfortable. And I remember this, and then the band stops. We're gonna take a break, and then they come back, and nobody's paying attention. So they pulled my dad up again. Everyone started paying attention, but that's what. And then come to find out, my mom's like, "Oh, your dad does this all the time. Bands pull that up all the time to do a song because the whole room would light up." But he's this big Indian with all this charisma, and so it was just one of those things that I noticed. And to this day, I was just telling my girl this. I was a kid throwing a baseball in the basement against the wall, and I was singing, and my brother and my dad caught me. And they start laughing, and they went, Bryan, just keep being pretty. Just throw that baseball, keep being pretty. And I went, okay. challenge accepted. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm the one who made a career out of it. And I'm the one who went off and I played the Rose Bowl. I've played, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have done things and make a living doing music. But, and how I got there is a whole nother story. But so that's where the love of it came from. And they know this. They're both of them are so apologetic, but also like, you're welcome. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I remember that moment because there are defining moments in our lives that actually you go, you don't know it. It could be somebody walking through that door and saying something to you and I, like challenging us to like, our podcasts are not going to be blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what? And this will be the moment that we're like thinking of, you know, that defines who we are.
That's Gritability.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
It's those defining moments. It's how certain people respond to those. Not everyone responds that. Most people don't respond that way. You've done it in all different areas of your life. Like, the patterns there are absolutely amazing. So, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but thanks, man. So back to the restaurant. And, you know, I've really not got into this. I've never sat down and talked about it. You know, I've talked at little nuggets, but you know, my buddy was on a show, and my agent's Natalie Rawson, my brother's there, and one of our best friends from back home was moving to California. And when I say moving, they both showed up in one car and said, where do we stay in? And I'm like, that spot right next to me. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't have a place. I've been living in my car. So after 2 days of trying to do that with them, and by the way, I had $7,000 I'd saved. It was in my car. So it wasn't that I didn't have money. It was that I didn't have the need to run off and go pay somebody to live somewhere when I was doing just fine. I could crash on a couch if I wanted to, if I needed to sleep in the daytime or watch someone's dog or cat in the day, because I worked from midnight to 7 a.m. at night. So I worked at night. And in the daytime, the gym was my shower where I worked out. The movie theater in the parking lot was my TV and AC. And they got to know me there. So I buy $2.50 ticket in the daytime and sleep in the chair for 3-4 hours. They just leave me alone. And they knew me. And so I couldn't do that with my brother and my friend. So I was like, God, I'll go get us an apartment. And I just paid for an apartment and moved in. But so I go to a show, and it's at Universal Amphitheater up at Universal. And it was like a KISS FM show. It's like all these artists on this bill. And my agent got us the tickets. And I get up to go to the bathroom, and I literally got swarmed by a bunch of teenage and 20-something girls. Like, no joke. Security's yelling at me. Hey, man, you can't be doing this. I'm like, I don't know who they think I am. I have no clue what's going on, man. Like, I'm just trying to go to the bathroom. So he sends me back to my seat, and I sit down and tell my brother what just happened. And my brother's like, yeah, right. I'm like, no, I'm serious. And we get up to leave. The show's over, and now it happens. And my agent's watching this. My buddies are watching this. My buddy Dan and my brother is standing next to me. Now my brother is yelling at the security guard because they're yelling at me for causing this jam in the lobby of all these girls. And I don't know what the hell they want, right? So my brother takes my head and just runs me through the crowd out the door. And then he goes, run this way. And we start running towards the buses. And a security guard's like, stop, you can't come through here. And my brother's like, tell them that, because we're being chased like by 200 girls. But what had happened was we tried to go across the bridge first. And mob mentality is when you're being chased, everybody turns and starts running towards us. So now they're running across the bridge at us. Now we can't go across the bridge to get out, so we have to go left. Now we're being followed. They go over the fence. Dan goes over, Cody goes over. I go to jump over, and I get grabbed. And this girl, I'm like, what do you want? And she's like, give me a hug. You better go. So I hug her, and I jump the fence, and we get to the other side. And all I remember is these little wooden slats and all these girls screaming. And I'm like, this must be what the Beatles felt like. This is insane. All right, my agent Natalie rolls up and she goes, "Get in the car." She goes, "What just happened?" And we're like, "I don't know. Like, I have no idea what just happened." So she had called me the very next day and she said, "Do you play guitar, sing, or anything?" And I'm like, "No. My dad does, my brother does, cousin, uncle. I don't do music." And I didn't.
And this is at what age?
I'm 21.
Okay.
21 years old. And I'm like, "No, I don't do that." And so maybe 5 weeks goes by and I go out to Ventura County and there's a show out there and it's another radio station show. And I'm in the audience and it starts to happen again. So security comes and grabs me and takes me and sticks me in a hallway. I'm standing in the hallway by myself. And I'm like, "I'm going back to my seat." And they're like, "No, you're not. You're a disruption to the show." And it's 2 shows. There's a show in the daytime and a show at nighttime. And in the daytime show, this was a daytime show. It's about 2,200 people in this theater. And they stick me in the hallway and then until this guy walks towards me and he has a lanyard, like a pass, right? And you've seen him on TV, but I've never had one put on me. And he puts it on me and he goes, "Do you sing? Who are you?" I'm like, "No, I don't know why. I don't know why that's going on. This is new, right?" And he said, "So you an actor?" I'm like, "No, again, I don't know." Like he goes, "Well, can you remember this?" And he rattles off Rainbow Girls, a certain song, their label, where they're from. "Can you remember this?" And that's all I remember, like the Rainbow Girls part. And I went, "Why?" And he goes, "Because this guy's bombing." And I won't tell you who it is because he's a big Vegas act now, but he was young. He was young back then. And they called him off the stage and said, "Give him the mic." And he was literally like, "Fuck
What?
you." He's like, and he just left. And he's like, "I got paid," and he left. And they're like, "Well, now you better get this," because they just lost the host. And so I grab it and I walk out on stage, and there's 2 spotlights whop, right on me. And I just like, "Yo, how's it going?" And everybody starts screaming. And I'm like, "My name's Bryan," and then screaming. And I'm like, "You having a good time?" And then I'm like, "Hey, wait a minute, turn off those spotlights. I can't see anyone." And I'm turning off spotlights so I can see this crowd. And in that moment, I went, "Oh, this is where I need to be. But I didn't earn this. This is not something I have earned yet. And I have to find a way to be here. This is where I'm supposed to be." And I hosted the rest of that concert, and I hosted the nighttime concert. And they couldn't even, when I tried to get to my car, I couldn't get to my car. They had to send a PA out to drive my car to the hotel, stick me in a car with the other artists, and drive me to the hotel. And they said, "We can't pay you. We paid so-and-so. And we give you a hotel room, free food, whatever you want to drink." It's the whole 4th floor. We bought the whole 4th floor. It's one big party. And I went, wow. And so my whole goal from that moment on was, how do I get here? How do I earn this? And I'm at Jerry's Deli, and I'm waiting tables, and I'm walking from the front to the back. And this guy grabs my arm, and he goes, "Hey, what's your name?" I said, "Bryan." He goes, "You a singer?" I said, "No." He goes, "That's funny. You've been singing, walking past me all night long. We need to talk." And his name was Alan Savory. And he's a big artist. He's produced a bunch of people now. And he was young at the time. And we wrote our first song together. And I ended up getting signed to a production deal with a guy named Mars Lazar, who was working on an album with Seal, for Seal's first album with a guy named Trevor Horn. So those guys signed me, put me in the studio, and wrote 3 songs. And that's how I started my music career. And I wanted more. This is who I am. This is how I am. Mm-hmm. Through the glass. I'm in a studio that I can't pay for. They're doing it all. I'm just singing and doing songs that I co-wrote with them. And I had met Seal and Eazy-E's in the next room. You know what I'm saying? We're at this studio. And I hear them say, "He's just going to be a recording artist. We'll record him. This guy has a great look. We can blah, 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 blah. We don't have to worry about him playing live." And I'm like, they don't know that that's where I deserve to be. That's where the universe told me this is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to earn that. So that didn't fly with me that day. And I remember seeing that. And I found myself seeing these guys playing in a park one day and walked up to them. Come to find out, they lived in my building, my apartment building. And they said, we're looking for a singer. And I said, I'll audition for you. And they're a band. And you know who that guy was, George? Old Man Liver.
Yes.
Old Man Liver, Steven Stotts. He has a podcast here, which is crazy. I brought him in as a guest, and now he has a podcast, and he's got a whiskey and all these things. But he was this young guy in college, and I ended up auditioning for his band and got the gig and said see ya to this whole other thing and being a recording artist. I didn't want it.
So you walked away from the studio, from Seal, from...
I walked away from that production deal. I honored it. Okay. Let them do whatever they're going to do with it.
Yep.
But then went after this band thing. And I found myself on stage. It was crazy. Like, I knew I was not good enough, but for some reason the room was full. Like, I would go play and the room was full. I ran into a guy before the pandemic, Happening Harry. That's what he goes by. And he sees my tour bus out at NAMM. NAMM's going on right now in LA. It's a big music convention. All the musicians come from all over. And he sees my tour bus outside and he goes, this is you? I said, yeah. He goes, I know this band. I'm like, oh, I appreciate it. That's cool. I go, my first show ever was playing for you. My first time stepping on a show or a stage live was playing for you at the Ice Tie Cafe. And he's like, wow, yeah, I remember that. You were not good. That's what he said. And I'm like, whoa, my girl was standing there. She's like, well, that was rude. And he goes, but I love your band now. He goes, wow, talk about putting in the work. And I knew it then. My brother's like, no, you weren't bad, man. Like, people wouldn't keep coming back. They saw something in you. There was something there. He just was comparing you, here, and he didn't understand why. He kept booking you. I'm like, I know. I kept filling the room, but I knew that I had to get better. And each time there was my whole life is made up of, I say that my spirit animal is a turtle, because I just got pointed in a direction and I was going around it, under it, over it, whatever. And this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And I'm enjoying this journey. And when it changes and I have to pivot, that's all right. That's where most people quit. When there's a pivot that happens, they don't know how to pick it up and move forward from that. And things have changed. I stopped acting to pursue music heavily. I've been through multiple bands, and these pivots only made me better each time. I'm playing the Rose Bowl when my bandmate was like, hey, here's a brand new song. I just wrote this. I remember it was called Shannon. And I remember the sprinklers are going off on the Rose Bowl grass. And I'm like, man, I never earned it to be here as an athlete, but I'm playing it today. It's like 30,000 people that I'm getting to play to. This is incredible. And he goes, I think I'm going to quit after today. This is a way to go out. The label doesn't want us to, if they're not going to pay for another album, I'm not going to tour another year on this record. And I'm like, don't tell the guys. Okay, but let's just enjoy today. And we did. And that turned into me borrowing a guitar from a friend and writing 3 songs. And I started this whole new thing, and I ended up, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And my whole career just took off.
New pivot,
that's what I'm saying. And instead of being down and out and bummed and whatever, and even in my dressing room that same day, I had Ray Liotta I'm eating dinner with at that show.
Really?
No joke, man. Like a soccer ball comes flying over and explodes his fucking, excuse my language, his spaghetti just goes all over him. right?
Yeah.
And he does that Ray Liotta laugh. And it's on me, but it's not my stage clothes. And I'm like, he goes, anybody got a shirt? I'm like, yeah, I got a band shirt. Throw a band shirt on him. And how Jay and Silent Bob, remember that show, The Clerks?
Yeah.
This was when Jay was not sober. He's sober now. But I remember he and his girl in my bathroom in the locker room, which was my dressing room, coming out like sliding down the wall. I'm like, they just shot up drugs. Like, and for me, it was like I was in a movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is weird because I don't do drugs. I've never been around it. I avoid those moments, and I couldn't kick out the celebrity out of my room, you know. And he just wanted to be around us because we're the band. You know what I'm saying? So he's just hanging with us thinking it's a cool thing. I'm like, nah, man, I don't need you here, you know, doing that.
Well, normally it's the rock stars.
Yes, exactly.
That are partying, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, throughout this, again, you made that decision at age 8.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that, you know, you were able to maintain that clarity, hold fast on that decision.
It's not something I struggle with.
Yeah.
I struggle with wanting to eat a piece of cake or something more than I do anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, yep. Those kinds of things. I don't struggle with that. That's not an issue. It's people go, oh, wow, I'm so happy for you. I'm proud of you. And I'm like, thanks. You don't have to be. It's not something that it's something I deal with.
Would you say this? Because I feel like a lot of successful people that find that are willing to put in the work. You know, we talked about going through doing difficult things. Most people, first sign of adversity, they tap, that's it, I'm done, I don't want to do this. The way that you talked about living in the car for 3 months, like,
yeah,
like to just brush that off means that from an early age, like you got comfortable doing the difficult things, putting in the work, time after time. So that just became normal for you. That's not normal for most people. But the question is this, like when it comes to addictions, most people have certain compulsions, right?
Right.
Those tendencies to do those things. I notice, and I'm going to speak for myself, having that in my background, knowing that there's some family history there, my family won't acknowledge it, right? They all have, it manifests itself in such a wide variety of ways. Food, alcohol, drugs, even sex addiction, like, and everyone's like, there's nothing wrong here. I'm like, I can tell you there's something wrong because I've had these compulsions from an early age. When I got involved in drugs and alcohol, I went as far as I could with it. When I was able to get sober, be removed from that, I took that same level of intensity and energy and focused on what I really wanted. Sounds like you were able to find that early on. Would you relate that?
Oh, yeah. You know, and the thing is, because I did recognize that those were the things. I recognize that I am somebody here that I would go out of my way for strangers and help somebody. But I know I have a temper. I know that if you disrespected me, my friends, my family, my Sticky Paws crew, whatever, I'll be the first one to put you in your place. That's who I am. And I know that add alcohol, I'm probably going to jail. And I know that. And I know that because I've had blackout moments without that. I've had a blackout, you know, several moments where I don't remember putting a guy through the doorway. I was, you know, in these situations where I didn't go look for it. It came at me because I am okay with being different, and different doesn't fit the mold in most situations. My buddies are asking me on a way to a bar. You know, my brothers want to teach me how to play darts. How come you guys have so many stories? And I'm like, it's not that. It's like it finds us. It's the weirdest thing. Yeah, right. And they witnessed it happening, and I'm playing darts, and they even offered to buy the guys drinks that are calling me Geronimo and all this stuff, you know, and then when they finally stepped in my face, it was done. My brother and I are like, we better go before the cops get here. And the bar owner is going, no, you come back in, you're good. They're 86th. I watched this whole thing go down. We offered to buy him drinks and, just to defuse this situation. And I know that add alcohol into that situation, and I probably wouldn't have put up with the first disrespect. You know what I'm saying? So I knew this as a kid, and I knew this. I saw that in uncles and aunts, and my grandmother died of cirrhosis of the liver when I was 8, and she was in her 40s. My uncle died of it. My dad's brother, the one that played guitar, cirrhosis. He had a bag, colostomy bag,
yeah.
Carrying it.
Yep.
Okay. Then his 2 sisters died of it as well. We're Native American Indian, and it runs in our family, firewater. So these kinds of things, I'm like, no. So I'm going to take that, and I know I have an addictive personality, somebody who can, it's just why I put myself in those situations.
Well, it sounds like you've been able to take those personality traits and find a way to channel those and use them to your benefit. Because every time that you had to pivot, what I'm hearing is you had to put in more work.
More work. Yeah. I'm doing it now. Coming out of the pandemic, I'm in a band called Elvis Monroe.
Yep.
And I lucked out and met one of my favorite, and he's my best friend, but he was in my favorite band at the time. And he left that band to do this project with me. And he was in Lifehouse at the time. And before that, he was in a band called Savage Garden.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, but Lifehouse, huge band, and huge at the time even. And so, we've tackled so many things. We were so much momentum, and then the world shuts down. And it just, in the entertainment world, it's still climbing out of it. It's not the same. Only the big names, are getting the work, and these smaller places are struggling because places don't exist. They didn't last, and there's venues that are all gone, and so we're coming out of it, and it's a pivot again, but that's okay. Like, I came out of it, putting out new music, writing new music. I got this place, Sticky Paws Studios. You and I are both the same. John talks about us in a way that I'm like, I looked at you, I'm like, he doesn't have a halo, like the way, but you know what I'm saying? Because that's how he talks about you, which is incredible. And I love that. And I'm just teasing about the halo thing. But it's, this is an extension of myself that I didn't know that I had. And to sit down and hear stories from other people to hopefully inspire somebody who's on the other end who needs to hear it and needs to know that they can connect with somebody like you and I, that they see a little bit of themselves in. They're looking in a mirror when they hear these stories, when we're seeing it coming from us, and that they can relate and know that it's possible to do this and possible to tackle that, and that you can go after the thing that everybody says can't be done. And the thing is, it's about the journey. It's about the journey. There is no destination. It's just destinations along the journey. And it's enjoying those things and knowing that we get today, you and I get to sit down. We've been talking about this for a couple of months now, and we're finally sitting down and talking, and to know that this is just part of it. Because you have to sit in my seat, and I got to hear your story. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, I would definitely love to do that. The journey you're talking about, Hero's Journey.
Yeah.
Amazing podcast.
Thanks, man.
You're doing amazing things. I appreciate you coming in and spending the time with me today and sharing all of that background, because I'm a guy that I like to look at those models of success, and I see everything. I see who you are.
Right. Thank you.
Today, and I just needed to know the background.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we got a chance to do it right here, because I know a lot of people are going to benefit from that.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Are we running long? Okay. Are we okay? Yeah. Because I know that what John what I was saving was hoping that, the three of us would sit down and talk, because what most people don't know about Nicole, you met my girl.
Yes.
And being a musician, our story is like a movie, she and I. It's insane. I told you I grew up in Oregon, and I'm in Oregon, and I'm on tour with Daughtry, and a buddy of ours, Brett Young, is out with Lady A, and he wants to meet up at this little bar where he used to do karaoke. He's like, meet me in the middle. And we had a night off, so, we're heading that way anyway, and we take the bus and park it in the parking lot, and we end up doing karaoke, and I end up witnessing this. And I say karaoke, I don't do karaoke, and neither does he. He just played to, 19,000 people, and we just played to 5, and we don't need to stand there and do karaoke. I don't do it anyway. And so he's like, let's just have fun and do some Ice Ice Baby, some Garth Brooks, whatever, Tupac, all this stuff I didn't know any of, right? Yeah. And it was just fun. And the manager made everybody put their phones away. And when it was over, I witnessed a conversation between he and his girlfriend, and actually it was his brother-in-law walks up to his girl and says, "Hey, do a shot with me. You're like family. You're his someday, right?" And she literally looks at Brett and says, "Brett, am I your someday?" And he goes, "Hold on, Bryan." He goes, "What?" And she goes, "Am I your someday?" And he goes, "Of course you are." And I put the conversation in my phone, because that's what I do. Like, I write about real things and real stuff. That's my vocal diary. That's how I deal with stuff. That's how I emote. That's how my music is honest, right? And that's what it's about for me. And so I witnessed this conversation, and he catches me and he goes, no, one day, someday. There's the title. Now go write it. And now we have our first co-write. And I was okay with that, because the guy had the current #1 at country radio. So I'm like, all right. So a couple of days later, on the bus, I come up with this song called One Day Someday, and he's playing at Route 91. And so we come back into town, and we're going to meet up with him. Ben went to go play guitar for him and help him out. And I bring the demo of the song, One Day Someday, which is about this girl who I'm going to look up from my boots in a room one day, and she's going to turn my life upside down. I'm going to do everything I can to get her attention from the stage. I'm going to do, and she's going to just be full of life and singing and dancing and whatever. And I know that she's my one day someday. And so I bring this song to them, and he plays on Saturday. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to go Sunday. But on Saturday, this girl walks up to me and says, "Hey, are you in that band Elvis Monroe?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Can I get a picture?" I'm like, "Sure." She goes, "I took a picture with you this past summer in May." And I'm like, "I remember you." And I did. I remembered taking this photo with her, and she shows me the photo. And she goes, "Let's take another one." So I did. And then 22,000 people there, and I'm coming from backstage, and I look to see, and there she is again. And she sees me looking at her, and I'm like, dang, she busted me. So what she calls me over is what she did, and she goes, "Hey, our picture's blurry." And I'm like, "Here, let's take it on mine." I take the picture, and I'm like, "What's your number? I'll send it to you." Right? Yep. So the next day, I wasn't going to Route 91, and I just text, "Are you going to the show?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'll be there." That was it. That's it. That was it. And I happened to be watching a band, Kane Brown, and I'm standing there, and she walks up next to me, and she's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Who's your friend?" She's like, "This is Nicole," and I'm like, "Oh, my echoes." Two Nicoles, Nicole and Nicole. And so that night I told her I'll be back in this area during Jason Aldean, but I'm going to grab Ben. And so, this is just somebody just in passing, and so Ben and I are backstage hanging out, talking with everyone. And I told the owner of the concert, we toasted water. You know, Ben and I had water and toasted a great event. Jason Aldean's going on. We turned to Brittany, his wife, and we're like, we're going to go fanboy out. We're going to go in the front and watch. We don't want to be back here watching this, you know. No one knows that it's not that cool backstage, like, you know, behind it all, but everyone wants back there. You know, everyone's just hanging out and just, you know, having a good time. And so we make our way out front and to the left. And I don't know how many songs into it, but I walk up and there's Nicole and Nicole. And they're there. And I'm like, hey, it's my Echoes. And the, you know, show goes on. And I don't know them. They're just standing in front of me and Ben's standing next to me. And then we hear what sounds like firecrackers. It's doing this thing. And I'm like looking up at the speakers, looking around. What's crazy though is we're walking out and we were taking pictures with fans. And when we get out front, this guy's yelling, Elvis, Elvis, can I get a picture? And I was like, sure. And Ben asked if he could put his hat on. And we take this photo and Ben puts on his black cowboy hat. And he's like, we saw you with Jake Owen in Alaska. I'm like, oh, they're Alaskan. Oh, cool. Take a picture with them. They walk about 15 feet directly behind us. And but all this craziness starts to go on and people are rustling. And then all of a sudden I see two people just go down right in front of us. And I look over my shoulder and there is a girl going right over the top of another person. And Ben grabs my arm and he says, run. And so I turn and I run like 2-3 steps. And I look back and the two girls standing in front of me are frozen. And now there's thousands of people just running this direction. And it's all, to me, I can talk about this like this because it feels like a movie scene and I didn't live it. Because I can talk about it like this. It's the weirdest thing. Nicole can't talk about it. Nicole, she can't deal. So yeah. I had stopped, reached out, grabbed her hand and said, stay with me. I'll get you out. And what we didn't know was the music had stopped and you're hearing right? And Ben had got hit in the arm and the kid that I took a photo with, I didn't know this till later, but he was shot and killed instantly. And so no joke, being an athlete and it was like, and I said this hundreds of times, it was like the game slowed down. The moment I had purpose, the moment I went, I'll get you out. Stay with me. They locked in. Our hands didn't get pulled apart. There were thousands of people running and no one ran through us, yet they were running over the top of everybody. Everyone, you look and people are running over the top of people on the ground, knocking people down, running through them. But you can't fault them because they're scared. People are scared, right? Sure. But everything slowed down for me. So they're going this way, which when I turned, Ben was gone. And he was on the ground. Apparently, he'd been knocked down. And then when he got up, I was gone. So he went with the crowd, and I went the opposite way. I went the way we came out. We came from backstage. And I look, and there's no security guard there. They had left. And I'm weaving through, and I get to the doorway, and I stopped them, and I cleared the corner to make sure that we weren't running into gunfire or whatever. And then I said, go. And we start running. Now, this is a fence. Here's 22,000 people on that side, and here's hundreds on this side. So I just took us on this side of the fence. And here's a stage, and you can hear it hitting the stage. You can hear it splatting on the pavement, tinging off the staging, thousands of people screaming. It was chaotic. And I'm running in boots and I'm having like this out of body experience, looking down, and I keep telling them, stay with me, look at me, I'm going to get you out. And we're running, and I come up around a corner because I'm taking us to the artist entrance. That's where I think is in the back corner. But what I didn't know is I came around the corner, the fence line started to bow back. So now I have to run back towards where all this feels like it's coming from.
Yep.
And so we hit that corner and you hear just people screaming. And what I didn't know was people were following me. So they stayed with me. Whatever I was doing, they were doing. And I didn't know this. My focus was the two. And then I see the fence and it's about as tall as these walls. And I know that I could hit that fence and get over, but I don't know
about 15 feet.
Yeah. I don't know if I can get them over. And somebody yells, "Get in here." And they open up a back of a truck, right? And there's a ramp, that goes into a truck, like when you're loading a U-Haul truck or something. There's a ramp. So I start lifting. I lift the two girls in, and I just start lifting people into this truck. And you're hearing gunfire, screaming. There was a couple who said they followed me, and instead of me lifting him in, they hid behind the tire so that way they could see what was coming. And I didn't know. I get inside and I see a familiar face. I see somebody I know, and I look at him and I'm like, "We're going to be okay." And he's like, "I'm not going to be okay." And I'm like, "We're going to be okay." And there's a guy screaming bloody murder, and he's pounding on the walls, and he's blacked out drunk. So, and he's screaming ISIS this and all these things. And I'm trying to calm him down. And his girlfriend is crying and screaming. And the other Nicole Yorba looks at her and said, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? She's asking her questions to get her to be quiet and calm down. And Nicole Ruffino is just sitting there looking at me like, "What are we doing?" And I'm standing, and I go to the door, and I open the door, and you hear gunfire. So I shut it, and everybody starts to panic, and I'm like, "Everybody stay down, everybody be quiet." And I go to grab my phone, and I'm go to make a video for my parents. And I'm 10 seconds into this, and the guy throws rock fingers in my video. So I'm like, "Fuck this." And I throw my phone. I'm not dying in here. And I put my phone in my pocket, and I grab him, and I said, "Is that your girlfriend?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you think it's fair that these two girls are taking care of, or this girl is taking care of your girlfriend?" And she jumps up and she goes, "Hey, asshole, take care of your girlfriend." And I'm like, "Everybody just stay down." And they're like, pulled me down because I'm standing. I'm telling everybody to stay down. And I'm like, and just like, I don't want to die in here because it just, that's the way it felt. And so I go to the door. Someone had already started to open the door, and there was a break in the fire. And somebody had taken the ramp that was on the back of the truck and put it on the fence. And right when the door opened, the one guy hits the thing and goes over. And I'm like, I jump out and I said, somebody's got to stand on the other side and catch the women. And I lift my friend out, this guy I knew and his girl, and they were gone. And then I just started lifting people out, and I grabbed Nicole and Nicole first. They followed me. And when I turned, I'm lifting people out of the truck. They're putting people over the wall. So they're right there, and they had this bigger girl putting her over the wall together, and I go and I push her, get over, and somebody, and I picture him like he was a tall Asian guy. He stood there for a little bit, holding people, and then he took off, which it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like he stood there helping people already. This was my choice that this was going on. And it was methodical. It was weird. It was the weirdest thing. Like I was moving through it, thinking, I'm going to keep them calm. I know what I saw. In the video, I'm like trying not to panic my parents. This is what it could be. This is what, whatever. And I'm going to tell them, this is where I'm at. And I turned it off. What I didn't know is my phone started to record again in my pocket. And it can hear all this chaos. And so when I remember hearing the girl scream, the screaming girl, I can't get over the wall. I broke my back. I just had surgery. And her boyfriend's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'll go first. I'll catch you. And then I remember later, I didn't lift them over. And I said, what happened? And well, here's what happened. It was, I'm trying to get Nicole Ruffino over. She slides back 2 times. I'm like, this is not happening. I grab her by the waist. I grab Nicole's, the Yorba's hand, and I start to run to the right. And I hear a police officer or a voice yell, this way, run towards Hooters. And he runs towards gunfire. And I caught it on my phone, but nobody else remembers him. I'm like, do you remember it? No one remembers. They just were so focused on what I told them we're going to do. So I'm like, okay, we're going this way. And we start to go. And here's where I have nightmares about this randomly, because I ran past people on the ground and I don't know their condition. I don't know what condition they were in as I'm running. But my focus was, I made you a promise. I made Nicole a promise. I'm going to get you out. And I'm holding them, and look at me, and they stop. Ruffino stops crying and starts to call her dad, stops running. And I'm like, we have to keep moving. Let's go. And we're running past people on the ground. Then we get to the opening of a gate, and the gate had been pushed down, and there was a guy with no shirt on. He'd been shot in the sternum, and he was gone. But his buddy is crying on top of him, trying to breathe life into him. And Ruffino was like now in pure panic mode. And Yorba's trying to calm her down. She grabs the phone. There's been an incident. Meet us at Hooters. Hangs up the phone. And I said, run into the dark. And what I didn't know was the couple, they were holding Yorba's hand in each other's hand. And there was an older lady holding their hand. And I led them out by foot. The older lady took off to the right, and the couple took off to the left, and I told them to run into the dark. Because in my head, why are they going to go after a few of us and everyone's going in the same direction? So, and we get across the street, and they don't remember this. There's a car parked in the middle of the street, and there's a guy shot in the passenger seat. And there's about 7 or 8 people hiding behind it. And that guy was clearly gone in the passenger seat. Yet there were people hiding behind the car looking up. And I ran them across the parking lot until I saw an iron fence. And I'm like, I can't, and there's no way I can get them over this iron fence. And 2 guys run up and they pulled it back, and I crawled through, pulled it back. And now all these people started to follow us. And then I got him to Hooters. And we get to Hooters, get inside. And now, because of what I do and that kind of thing, it's like a familiar face. People start running to me. And they're like covered in blood and mud and running towards me for help. And so I gather all these people, and I'm like, okay, around a machine. And I said, okay, who has phones and who knows phone numbers? Like, because it's an all-day festival. People's phones are dead. It's, people don't have their phones. People are separated from people. There's a girl running up to me crying, going, Bryan, can't find my sister. And I'm like, just stay with me. Do you know her number? Here's my phone. Here's, call, so we're doing this, and all of a sudden somebody yells, there's a gunman or whatever it was. And then hundreds of people in the Hooters casino floor start running towards us. And I'm like, okay, this way. And I pull everyone down a hallway through a doorway that says staff only, and it's a kitchen. And I stick them by the back door and hide them by the back door. And there's an off-duty police officer he's drunk, but he's like, I'm a police officer. He was at the concert. He goes, I got this door. You get the back door. So I'm hanging by the back door, and I have them quiet until it was cleared. And then as soon as it was cleared, Nicole's, Ruffino's parents showed up. Like, from that call, they raced there. He's ex-CSI, and he got his ass there.
Wow.
They said, can we take you? I said, no, there's people that are counting on me. I don't know them. I knew one person, but I got to get them out of here. And so he took his daughter and Nicole Yorba, and they left. And I went back to this group and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because they're saying, you know, there's a bombing over here. There's all this chaos in all the casinos. And I had said, look, I'm gonna walk towards a parallel with the airport. It's dark. It's pitch dark. The airport is dark. The roads are dark. It's all blacked out. And I said, we're going to walk until we get to a point and we'll have somebody pick us up. So we walked about 2 miles along the airport line holding hands. And there's about 13 of us. And all strangers, you know. And I'm walking them. And I get them to a grocery store parking lot, and somebody pulls in with a truck. And everyone loads in, and I'm dead silent. Like, they take us to a house. Ben had got separated from me. He was running, and he said he was weaving, running. He even called me when I was inside, and I'm like, run. I'm okay. I'll get out. Just run. And I hung up. I was like, I love you, and I hung up. And so he calls me. He goes, are you okay? I said, yeah, my phone is almost dead. He goes, go live on Facebook and let everybody know we're okay, because that's the only way anyone's going to know. And so I go live, and I guess that live version, I looked white as a ghost. I'm like almost going to cry, because now I'm hearing on the news what's going on here on the TV. There's all these people. One of the guys that had gotten an Uber and went to the hospital because his best friend was shot. His girlfriend calls him. He was separated. And so he took off. And then I get home to my house. Someone gave me a ride. And my parents, I had my parents live with me 7-8 months out of the year, because I'm at the point where at that time, you know, you take for granted that your parents are going to be around forever. And I'm like, no, come walk red carpets with me. Come do these things that I've earned. Come to these shows. You know, come be on stage in front of thousands of people playing the spoons. Come share this with me, because it doesn't mean anything unless we can do it together. So I have my parents with me. My dad comes walking out. My home phone's ringing, which I forgot I even had. My phone's ringing. My mom's phone's ringing. And it's all these news people from all over the world. CNN, Fox, HBO, it's all these people. And CNN had called. I'm talking to them. They asked me if I had a video. I said, I have like a 12-second video. It looks like I'll send it to you. I'm telling my dad, who's a Marine, sitting across from me. And it's this, I remember this because it's so surreal. There's my video, and my voice is on CNN. I'm not paying attention to it. My dad's not paying attention to it, but it's happening here. The phones are ringing, and my dad asked me, what happened? I'm trying to explain it to him. When I get done, he goes, were you scared? And I'm like, no. And I wasn't scared until right then. At that moment, I realized I'm not Captain America. Like, I had a Captain America shirt on, but who do I think I was? Because I was moving methodically, and I wasn't scared until that moment. I started crying, and I started shaking, because I could be one of these people that, you know, my parents could be dealing with another side of this right now. And that's how, and then it just like, it was crazy. So dealing with that, like I didn't go to bed. That concert was in the daytime. I didn't go to bed till Tuesday, because at my doorstep was Channel 7 LA, then HBO, CNN, every news state. They were fighting to who got there first. And then they started taking me to places. I didn't go to bed until my last interview with Ellen's producers at 7:00 on Tuesday. And on that Tuesday, they had put Nicole and I together for the first time, which we thought was stupid. Somebody saw me doing an interview. And this was weird, because on like the first 24 hours going into it, I'm walking through, I needed some water. And this big guy gets up from a blackjack table and goes, hey, you're the guy from TV. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you did good. And he goes to shake my hand, and I start crying, and I go to give him a hug. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And he goes, no, don't be sorry. Don't. And I'm like, trying to gather myself, feeling embarrassed, whatever. And he's like, you're fine. I walk outside, and this Indian lady with a cane sees me, and she goes, hey, you're the guy from TV. I'm proud of you. And I started crying, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, and I ran across the street, and news crews are following me across the street. And I'm trying to get to, to just out of there. I promised certain people I would do their things, and I was trying to get everybody to do it at the same time, but they wouldn't. And so it was taking its toll. But talking about it was helping. It was helping me, talking about it, because it kept saying, it's positive. What you did was positive. People need to hear this. It's all scary. It's awful. They need to hear this story. So I'm like, okay. And then the one time, one guy on the radio, I remember this, it was Mac on the radio, iHeartRadio, and he asked me, are you doing okay? And couldn't talk, was crying. No one had asked me that in days. And because it was just one after the other. And so, flash forward, they put Nicole and I together, which I thought was stupid. This French television crew asked me if I wanted water and food, and I can go sit in their car and hide from everyone. And I'm like, yeah. And then I get a text, and it's Nicole. And I'm like, hey, whatever happened to that couple? And she says, I don't know. I'll ask Yorba. And they told me. So I did get them out, because it bothered me that I didn't get somebody out. That was eating me up. And then they told me that I did. And then it was the wildest thing, because that crew heard me. They're like, is that one of your echoes? I'm like, yeah. They're like, can we go meet her? Have you guys seen each other since the shooting? And I said, no.
How many days later is it?
This is Tuesday at about 5:00.
Okay.
And so we go over. So it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Sunday it happens. So Tuesday we roll over, and I thought it was silly. And then all of a sudden she comes walking up, and both of us are in tears, and I'm holding her hand like I knew her, and I'm talking with them, and CNN is shooting over the shoulder, stealing it as well, and meaning like grabbing it as well, and because she only did like one interview. They discovered her from the video. They found her. I didn't know her name. I only knew her name was Nicole. And so it's news people, and they were able to find her at home. And she's not somebody who, is used to this kind of thing. So this is how we dealt with it. The days went on, and she and I was there for her, and she was there for me. And over time, we even went to like this, on the 5th of October, I played a show because I needed to be back on stage, and they were doing a fundraiser at Red Rock. And Brian Lindsay, George, you know who Brian is. Brian put on this show with band Otherwise, and I can't remember the other band, who's blown up since. They were the opening band, and now they're huge. And I wrote this song, and I rewrote it, called The Fight, and I wrote it for the city, and it's like an anthem. And so I got to meet Nicole's parents proper, and they came to the show, and I pulled Nicole on stage, and my mom stood there looking at this moment and went, there's something more to this moment right now, because you grabbing her hand is like normal. And I'm like, yeah, I grabbed her hand during the chaos, and I'm singing this song, and I'm singing it to her, and there's lyrics to her in the song. And it's on Inside Edition the next day and all these TV shows. And then on that night, actually, my mom, I have to call 911 because my mom had an anxiety attack. She thought she had a heart attack, but it was anxiety from everyone coming up to her going, your son, what happened, all this stuff. So I'm calling 911. I'm sitting next to my mom in the hospital room, and then I have to go to LA to do a show, a fundraiser in California. And so my mom is okay. I put her back, get her back home. And my dad was in Oregon working for helping my brother on something. And I'm driving to LA, and DJ Silver, who is Jason Aldean's best friend, and he was the act on right before Jason, calls and says, "Hey, I'm trying to find Bryan," to Ben. And Ben goes, "He's sitting next to me asleep." Because I've been up all night with my mom in the hospital. Okay. And I literally hear his voice, and he said, "My mother-in-law wants to talk to you." And I went, "Okay." And he gets his mother-in-law on, and she said, "I followed you. You put me in the refrigerator, and then you led me out by foot." And I start crying, and she's crying, and he's like, "You saved my mother-in-law. Thank you." And he was there, but he was hidden in a whole nother, under a bus or something. And so I get to the show, and I'm like, oh, there's news truck there, and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm not ready to do this. Like, I'm dealing with my mom, dealing with all this stuff, and the news crew was interviewing these 3 girls, and I'm like, okay, we're good. 2 of those girls come running up to me, and they're in tears, and they tell me what I did for them, and that Nicole put them over the wall, while I led them into the truck and lifted them in, and then was keeping them calm, and then was getting people out, and they put Nicole helped them over the wall. And so people started coming out of this stuff. And so through this, Nicole and I learned to, deal with this gritability of like what we went through, you know what I'm saying? And she, it was crazy because I brought a song to it. I wrote a song, then I wrote a song about that night called "You Have My Word," which was to her, saying, that you, in that moment, as long as I'm holding your hand, you have my word. And then she almost died of viral meningitis in November, a month later.
Oh my God.
And her parents call me and say, "Hey, she's asking for you." I'm like, "She's asking for me?" And they're like, "Yeah." And she doesn't remember this. And I went to the hospital and was holding her hand by her bed until the doctor said I couldn't be there. And then flash forward, I'm going out on tour with 3 Doors Down, and I tell the bus driver, "Hey, I forgot something at the grocery store while everybody's packing up." And I didn't. I raced to her house, knocked at her door, and said, "We've been through this. You almost died. You've been through this. We went through this together. We've been helping each other. We talk every morning. But I know somebody's going to come into your life, swoop you off your feet. But that person has me to answer to now, because we've been through way too much together. And there's something about us. And now he has me to answer to. So just know that, he's got your parents, and now he's got me." And I left on tour. And then she ended up surprising me on the tour in the middle of it, came out, and I'm like, whoa. And then at the end of it, I flew her out for the last 2 days on the tour. And it was the greatest day of my life. The bus driver drove through the snow, and she gets off the shuttle bus in the snow, parked my bus out front, and everybody's at the front of the bus at 7 a.m. watching, and nobody videoed. Nobody videoed. And she said, "I love you." And we've been together ever since. And that was February 10th. So it's been 5 years February for us. And we've been together, and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And it came out of something so awful. And how I deal with things is write about them. And I wrote this song, in that time that I was on the bus, I wrote 3 more songs. So she could see how I was feeling. And I could see, and she was writing poetry back to me. So I could see how she was feeling, like, or at least struggling with these things. And then I finally went for it, and I wrote this song called "Falling for You Bad." And that was it. And so it was a 6-song stretch between bringing "One Day Someday" to "Falling for You Bad," and then, us being together. So it's pretty insane. And there's so much more to it. And but yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the story and to see what's next for you.
Thanks, man.
Hero's journey. I mean, truly, truly remarkable. I didn't know if you were going to go into all that today. Man, I am so grateful that you gave me the entire story. You gave me the background. Everybody got a chance to hear that. What you did is truly, truly heroic, amazing.
Thanks.
Man.
I'm sorry I talk so much, but bro, like
That's what we were here for.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear your story, man.
I understand, but
Inspiring.
I appreciate that. It means a lot. And your story is just as inspiring, and you deserve to be in that seat. You are somebody who people need to know your story, and people need to know what you can and what you can do, and then what you will do. And it's fun to watch that and to get to know you now and to see that and be able to witness the things that you've done. I mean, I know what you just told me you did in Washington and those kinds of things. You're gonna leave your mark, and that's what we're here to do. You know what I'm saying?
Most definitely. That's what it's all about. Hero's journey, gritability. We're both looking to leave a mark, leave a positive, lasting legacy for all those difficult things that we've gone through, and to get to the other side, ideally to inspire other people to act in the same way, to demonstrate that same courage. Thank you for coming in, for sharing this story.
Thank you for having me, man.
Man, I'm grateful that we got to spend this time
Yeah.
together, and I'm looking forward to us spending more time together outside of here. So it's been another incredible episode, Gritability, power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. Man, it's been a great episode. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, with me, Bryan Hopkins.
Thanks for having me, man.
Wow.